Hello, YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. I wanted to video just a short intro that you guys are getting on the YouTube version of the podcast that no one else is getting if they're just listening to it on their podcast platform. And not to just the podcast platform, we're all about the podcast. But I thought I would point out my headphones. These headphones, okay, let me make sure I'm getting this pop filter okay. These headphones are brand new, you guys. I saw them on Amazon. I loved them. They're just so cushiony and comfortable, and I can hear myself really well. But I realized on the video, you guys, I'm going to take my glasses off for a second, that they are just huge. I mean, they're white. They're kind of girly. I love that. I love everything girly, as you know, but they're kind of funny looking. So if you'll just put up with that, I just wanted to point that out. And also point out that in today's episode, I'm going to actually talk a little bit about my backdrop and what you see here in my home office. So that'll be at the very end. So check that out as well. I really hope you love today's episode. Remember to comment and give us ideas for future episodes. I just got an idea about doing an episode on mom guilt. Now, I do have an episode on the podcast early on. I think it's episode 4 or 5. I'll double check and put it in the show notes about being a career mom and sort of the struggles with that. But I haven't done one about that in a while. And I didn't just look at mom guilt. I didn't take a deep dive. I alluded to it, but I didn't really take a deep dive on that. So that came from a recent subscriber to the podcast. So that idea came from them. So thank you so much. Shout out to Julia who gave us that suggestion. So we would love more suggestions like that. So be sure to comment on YouTube. Also be sure to give us a thumbs up and share our videos. That helps us on this platform to grow. And also, of course, obviously, if we get more subscribers to the YouTube channel, that's going to push out our content to other folks and help get our message to all the career women who needed that inspiration. So we appreciate that so much. So thank you. And if you've been a subscriber for a while, thank you for being a loyal audience member of ours. Love the dialogue when you guys comment. So be sure to do that. And again, thank you for your great ideas and for your support. So enough about the intro. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. It's actually going to be a two-parter. You'll find out more about that if you listen to the very end. All right, you guys, have a great day and enjoy episode 23.
Are you a strong, independent woman who's passionate about her career? Then this podcast is perfect for you. Based on her book, The Career Woman's Secret Playbook, career coach Dr. Dawn Hamby shares the kind of insider secrets you can only know if you've hired, fired, and promoted employees over the past 30 years.
Ladies, I'm on a mission to help busy women just like you create a career and life you love without sacrificing your work-life balance to get it. Come join me as we inspire and motivate each other only as women can and have lots of fun along the way.
With Dr. Dawn's tools, strategies, and action steps, you can unleash your personal and professional power in a whole new way. Here's today's episode.
Hello, ladies, and welcome to episode 23 of the Career Woman's Secret Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Dawn, CEO and founder of Dr. Dawn ShopTalk, and you might remember that in last week's episode, we asked whether or not you were a perfectionist, which, remember, ladies, is especially important to us and to this community of career women that we have on this platform, since you might remember that the research shows that women are plagued with this issue more often than our male counterparts. There's some interesting brain research about that. So if you missed that episode, be sure to check that out. And something else that's very closely tied to perfectionism is fear. Now, you might think that a fear of failure is what really drives perfectionism. Is there an element of that in perfectionism? Well, sure, but oftentimes the other side of that coin is the fear of success, and that is much more subtle. It's also just as important to examine And because I believe that a fear of failure kind of gets the press a little bit more and people know a little bit more about that, I wanted to really tackle this issue of the fear of success. Because think about it. We're all so driven. There's just so much media coverage about trying to become successful, being your best, right? You hear about living your best life. I definitely talk about that as well. And then once you get there, is it possible that you're sabotaging your own success because you're uncomfortable with not having something to work on? I know I definitely have been suspicious about this myself because once I've accomplished a goal, and I'm going to use my health journey as the best example, because when it came to work goals and most personal goals, I was pretty good at staying there and really thriving and taking it up a notch. But when it came to my own health journey, especially before I got my hormones figured out, because remember, ladies, I've told you I'm 56, proud of that, never going to lie about my age. And when I hit 40, I really started to struggle with my own health journey. My weight fluctuated where it never did before. My sleep, my energy, all those things became an issue. And I looked at lots of different methods. I looked at hormone replacement therapy, especially once I hit menopause and things like that. Intermittent fasting is what really helped me in combination with hormone replacement therapy and those kinds of things. But one of the reasons I bring that up is because once I actually got to my goal weight and my fitness level, the size of clothing I felt best at, and things like that, I noticed that I always would slip. Now, part of it is I really didn't have my hormones worked out, and intermittent fasting had not become part of my lifestyle. So my hunger was still out of control. But I know another part of it was that I had this fear I couldn't stay there. and and I felt like I was going to be on a diet the rest of my life and not be able to enjoy what my husband and I love to do, which is to go out to restaurants. But part of it was that I just almost didn't feel comfortable anymore being at that size. I saw that for me, it seemed like an unattainable goal. I'm 5'1 3/4". For me, I know I felt the most comfortable being between a size 4 and then sometimes a size 2. I don't like being too thin. And I know you're like, oh, like that's a problem, right? I can only say that now, okay? And it feels great to say that, I guess, a little bit. But if that whole issue is a trigger for you, I'm not talking about starving. I'm not talking about being super scrawny. I'm talking about for someone as tiny as I am height wise, between a 2 and a 4, and sometimes between a 4 and a 6, depending on the designer, right, ladies? We're never the same size. But I started checking my measurements more than my weight and my clothing size and what I felt confident in. And when you see videos, you're going to see I'm not, like, again, starving myself by any means. But, I'm a curvy gal. I do like to have those Puerto Rican curves. I don't want to give them up. So with my figure, I felt the most confident at that size. Well, I realized that sometimes I was sabotaging my maintenance. I didn't mean to, but maybe part of me was just fearful of that success and what that meant. In other words, how hard did I have to work to stay there? Or was my body naturally going to always be bigger? And then I didn't feel comfortable. For me, I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin when I was a size 8 or a 10 or a 12, because again, I'm really petite. And so it didn't feel good. It didn't feel like it matched my personality or my energy, my love of fashion, all those things. So a fear of success, I think, is many times underrated in terms of how powerful it can influence your life, and oftentimes not in a good way, right? So I am really excited to bring this issue to our community of amazing career women that listen to this platform, listen to this podcast. So thank you so much for joining me today. Now, before we take a deeper dive into this issue, if you're new, I always want to welcome you to our community of busy but amazing career women. who are really interested in living their lives with more passion and purpose. So if that sounds like you are definitely in the right place. I drop new episodes on Monday, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. And be sure to head over to our website as well. I've created tons of free goodies for you. Some really fun downloadables that kind of give you some tips and tricks. Lots of things that we talk about on this podcast, I've created in the written form for you. So you can print that out, kind of hang that up and to kind of remind you of some of the important things we talk about on the podcast. Now, I cover this in depth in our book, so I'll include the links to our website. You can find us at drdonshoptalk.com and also the book that our podcast is based on. Now, we also dive deep on these issues on our YouTube channel. Some of you might be watching this right now on YouTube because, yes, I'm creating a video version of the podcast. I've created a playlist for you right there on the YouTube channel. So you can find us at Dr. Dawn Shop Talk on YouTube. So check that out if you like seeing the recorded version of this, the actual visual version. I also wanted to let you know some of our podcast episodes, I've actually included the behind the scenes. So it's filled with all the bloopers. So if you like to see how often some of us podcast hosts might take to give you the edited version, you get started talking about something, maybe you go off a little bit too much on a tangent, or some words all of a sudden you fumble over. So if you enjoy that, I have created that for you as well. And I've created a playlist. So on the YouTube channel, if you go to our playlist, you're going to see exactly where all the podcast episodes are. Okay. So I created that for you to make it a little bit easier for you. And again, I'll be sure to include those links in the show notes below. Remember to just scroll down. It's really easy on the podcast to find that. If you're watching us on YouTube, just click on more and then click again. Oftentimes, that's what you have to do to find all the links. So be sure to check that out. All right, you guys, again, I'm so excited to talk about this fear of success. So let's start by discussing that fear that I mentioned you're probably more familiar with, and that's the fear of failure. In fact, a fear of failure is so common and talked about so much that, do you know, if you were to go to Google right now and type that in, you would get 347 million results. Now, let's say you wanted to look up a book on the subject. I went to Amazon, and when I typed in fear of failure on Amazon, I ended up with 3,000 results. So tons of books, right? Tons of resources that you could find on Google. But who has time to try to find out everything you could? Okay, that's what I'm here for. I'm going to give you my take on what I've seen in terms of not just my employees, my clients, but also in my own journey, in my career, and in my life in terms of fear of failure. And also sort of the definition and how that shows up in your life and what really seems to resonate. So let's talk about that a little bit right now. I say all that because, number one, I want you to realize that you are not alone. Now, interestingly enough, a person's ability to manage their fear and to do things in spite of the fear, did you know that that's oftentimes a predictor of success? In fact, a common characteristic among those with grit is this belief that you should not be afraid of failure, but instead should embrace it. Now, remember, we did a recent episode on uncovering your grit, and I really get into a lot of detail about how to do that and how to become unstoppable in the book. But for now, just go back to the previous podcast episode. I'll put that in the links below. But yes, embrace that fear of failure and making that mistake, because it's actually going to lead you to that path of finding out what does work. Remember that successful people see failure as just part of the process, and they often credit failure as their greatest teacher because the lessons they've learned from the failures were stepping stones to their successes. So if they didn't take that chance and just move forward and take action, they never would have discovered those lessons. So just think about that. Now that I've reminded you of what the fear of failure really is, let's look at the flip side of that coin, which is what today's episode is all about. And it's oftentimes misunderstood, and it's actually confused with a fear of failure, since they're both fear-based and they both can lead to that self-sabotaging behavior we talked about. So follow me here. Whereas the fear of failure focuses on the trauma of what you're going to feel like if you try so hard to reach a goal and you don't get there, the fear of success, remember, is focusing on what happens when you actually get there. And ironically, they're both rooted in that scarcity mindset I've talked about before. And they're also both rooted deep down inside in feeling like you're not enough. And let's talk about that. That really shocked me because I'm naturally a pretty confident person. And when I read the research and really took a deeper dive, I realized, okay, yeah, I mean, sure, I know I'm human just like everyone else. I'm not a gazillion times confident every single instance in my life and in every single situation, right? I feel blessed that I do have natural confidence, but I also know I create an environment for myself to make me feel that way. In fact, I've got episodes on the YouTube channel. I don't think I've really dived deep in this in the podcast, and I need to. I've created some videos on how to create healthy boundaries because, for example, one of the ways I feel confident is that I've surrounded myself with healthy people. I've surrounded myself with people that lift me up and don't put me down. And as tough as it's been to establish those healthy boundaries, and even say in friendships that I've adored, friendships I've valued, if it meant that they were being unhealthy and causing more drama in my life and just becoming toxic in ways, for example, communication, not being willing to really talk things out and make presumptions that were just not correct. Well, all those kinds of things, if they're not willing to be true friends and just be there for you, whether it's a friendship, a romantic relationship, even a family member, I, in a healthy way, would talk about it. And if that person wasn't willing to reciprocate, well, then I had to make the tough decision to put those healthy boundaries in place, draw those lines in the sand, and move forward, either with that relationship in a different way or without it. So that's one way that I know that I can become comfortable with success because I'm going to surround myself with people that make me feel good about myself and make me feel confident. So that's something to think about. Your fear of success, part of that could be that the people you're surrounding yourself with are just not comfortable with your success. And maybe it's shining a light on where they feel they failed in their life. And they probably haven't failed. They just haven't learned the lessons that you've learned already, hopefully, by listening to this podcast and subscribing to our YouTube channel. So when it comes to a fear of success, it's not even that you think you're incapable of succeeding. It's more about the fear of change that may come up and whether you're really ready for it. You might think you're ready for it. And then when you get there, you get to the top, you realize, ooh, it is a little lonely here at the top, and here's why. Okay. So, for example, I've created a list for you based on the research and based on what I've seen in my own life and in the lives of my employees and in the lives of my clients. So let's go through this. And I want you to ask yourself, have I ever said any of these disempowering statements? Have I ever said these negative statements to myself? And if I have, that's okay. If it's once in a while, maybe it's not affecting you very greatly. But what if it's a lot? What if you're actually saying and thinking these things much more often than you realize? And do you believe any of this is true? Now, you might say you don't believe it's true, but again, do your actions show that you believe it's true? Okay, so let's take a look at that. Are you ready for the list? Here we go. Number one, the higher up you go, the further you have to fail. Number two, if you achieve too much, you'll alienate your peers, your family, your friends. Number three, success isn't all that it's cracked up to be. Number four, if you make more money, you'll have more problems. And here's a flip side to that, kind of tied into it. If you make more money than your friends or family, deep down inside, they're going to be resentful and you won't have as much in common. Here's something else that ties in with that. If you make more money or too much money, your family and friends are going to feel less than, and they're going to feel even more resentful. Okay, here's another one. It's not safe to be in the spotlight. All right, here's another one to think about. It's lonely at the top. And ironically, you heard me say that not too long ago. All right, and last but not least, success might change you. And most of the time, it's probably not going to be for the better. And I'll have to go back and look at what the total is. How many did I give you? But do you see how these statements can really start sabotaging your success, because all of a sudden you're just not comfortable. You feel out of your comfort zone. I definitely felt that way when I would reach my goal weight, my size. I started self-sabotaging sometimes. Remember that part of it is I hadn't found intermittent fasting. So I had a harder time levelizing my hormones, levelizing my hunger, and all those things. But another part of it is that deep down inside, I had convinced myself that to stay at the fitness level and the size I wanted, especially as I got older, that was unrealistic because it was going to take so much work. I really bought into the idea that the older you get, you're just going to gain weight. So why should I kill myself? I've worked too hard. I want to enjoy myself. I want to enjoy vacations and eating out and fine wines and, fancy chef-inspired dinners and 7-course meals. And so I didn't think I could do that and be healthy and thin. When I say thin, I mean healthy, not starving. But I'm having sugar every day. I'm having carbs every day. I'm just, balancing that out. So I say all that because I realized that I kind of got a little addicted to losing weight. It was so fun for people to say, "Oh my gosh, look how great you look. You've lost weight." Like, I loved that. It just made me so proud because it was so hard to get there. So I realized, and I'm glad I realized that was the reason, because I thought, am I some egomaniac where I need people to compliment me all the time? I've read that book. You may have read it too. They're not sponsoring this video or this podcast, but The 5 Languages of Love. Now, if you want to sponsor, hello, reach out to me. I love that book so much, and it really resonated with me. And I realized that verbal affirmations were just high up on my list. And there's nothing wrong with that. I love telling people how great they look, how much they mean to me, how much I love and care about them, all those things. That's important to me. But I also reciprocate, and I realize how valuable that can be if that's your love language. So for me, I realized I was putting too much emphasis on that. And my family and friends and my loved ones, they can give me verbal affirmations in healthier ways, okay? I don't want my body to go up and down in its weight all the time, because that's very taxing and that's not healthy. So again, guys, take a look at that list. Let me go over it again. Number 1, the higher up you go, the further you have to fail. Number 2, if you achieve too much, you're going to alienate your peers, your family, your friends. Number 3, success may not be all it's cracked up to be. Number 4, if you make more money than your friends and family, they're going to be resentful. Number 5, if you make too much money, your family and friends and loved ones, they're going to feel less than. Number 6, it's not safe in the spotlight. Number 7, success may change you, and probably not for the better. Number 8, it's lonely at the top. Okay? I probably said that out of order, but those were my top statements, those negative beliefs and disempowering statements that I think can affect you. And I've heard myself say some of this or fear some of this. So if you have this in your mindset in any way, once you get to the top, you're not going to stay there. In other words, once you achieve that goal, you might start slipping. And it's just a common thing that can happen to all of us. So that's why, for my career ladies out there, we're already so busy. We already may have some obstacles that our male counterparts don't have. So if I can share on this platform, whether it's on my podcast or YouTube channel, if I can shed some light on some of these disempowering ways that we may be, again, standing in our own way of success, I want to help my career girlfriends out there realize these subtle ways that they may be holding themselves back and actually interfering with their success. So, in next week's episode, I wanted to make sure this one wasn't too long, but in next week's episode, I'm going to give you the action plan you need to really tackle this fear of success. And by doing that, it's kind of help you with that fear of failure as well. All right, ladies, I hope you've enjoyed tuning into this week's episode. And if you're watching us on YouTube, I hope you enjoy today's backdrop. I'm not traveling today. I'm actually filming this in our home studio. So hope you like the aesthetic you can see there behind me that has a picture of our book. And you may not be able to see these plants right here and what they say. I hope that inspires you as well. The first one says, "Oh, hello, week. Let's do this." I love that personally. And that's another reason I like to film this on Mondays and record this on Mondays so you can hopefully get a little inspiration for your work week ahead and just your life ahead, right? Who doesn't love a little inspiration on a Monday? And the second one right here, if you can see that, says dream big. That's why I always want you to dream major big. I want you to reach for the stars. And then start thinking of the action steps to get there. If you're too, quote, realistic, right? You start thinking about all the ways it can't happen. You're coming from a place of no. I want you to come from a place of yes, let's do this. Then let's see. What do we need to do to get there? Then if you've exhausted every possibility, okay, fine. Then let's think of a new dream. Okay, but I just don't want you to pop that balloon before you have a chance to see if it can take off. Okay. And the third one you see here, pictured behind me, if you're watching us on YouTube, I love this. It says wish for it, and then it's scratched out and it says work for it, right? Isn't that great? I love that. I can't wait to see you next week. If you're joining us on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and our podcast, and definitely rate and review. The more often you do that, the more our platform will grow and we can get this message out to more amazing professionals just like you. Now, before I leave you today, don't forget our motto here at Dr. Dawn's Shop Talk, and it's this: if you're not having a fantastic day, you have the power to make it one.
I know our episode is over, but this is just the beginning. If you're ready to take action but don't know where to start, just head over to drdawnsshoptalk.com for lots of free resources, ways to work together, and for even more. Subscribe to the Dr. Dawn Shop Talk YouTube channel. Remember, ladies, you don't have to take this journey alone. I've got you covered. Till next time.